Today we're starting a brand new series. This is full stack WPF MVVM, and what the heck does that mean? Well, by full stack I pretty much just mean that we're going to be doing all the development from the database layer all the way to the UI layer. Some of the things that we're going to be working with are NED framework for our database interaction. We're going to be using WPF for the UI, of course. And along with that, we're going to be using MVVM architecture, model view model. It's going to help us separate our concerns with the UI and the logic for the UI. And then along the way, we might also do some unit testing. And of course, we're going to be calling an API as well. So now that we have an idea of what we're going to be working with, well, what's this application going to do? What are we building? And I've seen a lot of tutorials, everyone does like a blog, some kind of like grocery store, something like that. So I decided to take it up a level a little bit, and we're going to be doing a trading application, trading stocks, all those things. So this is a little database diagram. So this is what our database is going to look like. We're going to have users. So of course, people are going to be able to log in, log out, register for our application. It's going to support multiple users. A user is going to have an account which will have a balance. So the balance is how much buying power you have. And then we're going to have transactions in the database. So whenever you purchase a stock, it'll go into the database. So that's our database. We also have a domain, which kind of reflects the database pretty much, the user, the account, the transactions. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using these asset transactions to calculate what your total assets are. And I don't want to get too far into this because we're going to actually be implementing it in code. So if it doesn't make sense right now, don't worry, we're going to implement everything and it'll make perfect sense along the way. And then we're also going to have some service classes. These are all just interfaces. So I have this generic iData service that'll interface with Entity Framework actually. And then we'll have some buy stock service, sell stock service. That's when you want to buy, sell stocks. iStock price service. So that's getting the price of stocks. That's going to be called from the API. And all three of these will be called from the API as well. Alright, so I have a blank solution here. Absolutely nothing in here. Just simple trader. And first thing, let's set up a class library. So we're going to be doing .NET Core class library, and we're going to call this simple trader .domain. There we go, we got a fresh project, and this project is just going to have all of our domain logic inside of it. So the first thing we want to do is obviously delete this class 1 because we don't want it. And I'm going to make a new folder called models. So this is going to have all of our domain models inside of it. And let's actually bring up that Visio diagram again. And I want to do like side by side here. So we're going to actually just implement these UML diagrams that I have. So we're going to have a user. We're going to have an account. We're going to have let's just do asset transaction for now. And we'll leave all the other stuff. Well, let's do stock too. We're going to have a stock. Alright, so let's implement our user. This should be pretty simple. So we're going to have a public property for the ID. We're just going to do some simple getters and setters right now. We're going to have a string for the email. We're going to have a string for the username, and that's actually all we're going to have. Alright, so there's our user. Let's get rid of that for now. And let's go to our account now. So again, this is just a simple object as well. We'll have an int for the ID. have a user, so it's going to be the account holder. We're going to have a balance. And we'll have a list of asset transactions. How does it know what that is? Oh, because I made it. Whoops, okay. And that's going to be called asset transactions. That was such a dumb movement. Okay. What's it saying here? Okay. So it's just complaining because it's in public, but now it is. And asset transaction. It's going to have an ID as well. It's going to have an account associated with it. We're going to have a boolean is purchase. I really don't like the name of that. I'm really thinking, like, should it be an enum? I don't think so, because it's either buy or sell, but is purchase. I don't know. If anyone has better ideas instead of is purchase, let me know in the comments. And then we're going to have a stock associated with this. And lastly, an int for the amount of shares. I think I'll actually call this amount of shares, or share amount. Or just, why not just shares? I don't understand. Okay. Now why is this complaining? Okay, it's because stock isn't public. Okay. So now lastly, we'll have our stock. And this is just going to be it's pretty much going to be a value object. So it's just going to have a symbol and the price per share. Okay. So by value object, I pretty much just mean it doesn't really have identity. Its identity is made up of its values. That's what its values make it unique. That's how we'll describe that. Alright, so now we have our domain filled out. This isn't really like everything, but it's pretty much almost everything. Alright, so now we're going to start implementing these interfaces as well. Those are going to go in our domain too. And we'll have a separate folder for those called services. And we're not going to implement all of these. I think the only one I really need right now is this iData service. Because my main goal right now is just to get the database set up eventually. And we don't really need all of the other domain logic. We pretty much just want to have an interface for accessing data. So it's going to be an iData service. And it's going to be generic, so we can use it for any entity. And some of the methods it's going to have, it's just going to have generic CRUD stuff. And one thing I want to do is I want to make these tasks. And I'm making them tasks, I want them to be able to be called asynchronously with async and await. So this is going to return a list of t, and we're going to call that get all. Got to import task, control dot, enter. Then we'll have a task of t, get. That's going to be like a get by ID. And then we'll have a create, so that's going to be task of t as well. So whenever you create something, it'll return the created item. You can just return the ID, but I think in the past I've had trouble with that. So I think just to be safe, I've just started returning the entire object, and from there I just work with that. Call that t entity. And then we'll do an update as well. Again, I'm returning the entire object. And we'll have the ID and the new value. And then we'll have a delete as well. And that's just going to be a true false. Alright, so that's pretty much our generic data service. Alright, so that's enough work in our domain layer for now. Next thing I want to do is start setting up Entity Framework. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new project. And this is going to be .NET Core once again. And we're going to call it Simple Trader .Entity Framework. Alright, let's get rid of this class 1, of course. And let's go into our NuGet packages. And we're going to browse for Entity Framework. Now there's two options here, two main options. This is actually for .NET Framework, but we are using .NET Core, so we're going to use this. And it defaults to this version 3.0, but I'm using .NET Core 2.2, so I'm not going to select 3.0. I'm going to select 2.2, and let's just install that. I accept. Alright, so we got Entity Framework Core in here. Maybe later down the road we'll do an update, try and update to the latest version of .NET Core. But for now we're just going to be using version 2.2. Alright, so we got Entity Framework installed. First thing we want to do is let's create a new class. We're going to call this the Simple Trader DB Context. And this is going to be a public class, and we're going to inherit from DB Context, which is part of Entity Framework Core. So what this class is going to do is it's going to manage our interaction with the database with Entity Framework. So to do that, we're going to have to tell it what kind of entities that we want to store in our database, and that's going to be done through DB sets. So we're going to have a DB set right here, and it's generic, so this is where we tell it what entity we want. And we're going to be doing, what's our models here? So let's do users for now. We'll just call this as users, and it's just going to be a simple property. But we're going to have to import user, and that's going to come from our Simple Trader domain project. So of course we can just control dot, it'll add a reference to that project, and that it'll import the namespace as well. So now if we go to our dependencies, projects, we have a reference to our domain layer. So now we have users. We're going to have another DB set for accounts. We'll call this accounts. And then we'll have another DB set for asset transactions. So again, going back to our UML diagrams, it's basically just this. Alright, so now we have to actually generate our database. But to do that, we're going to have to be using migrations, of course. And when we generate those migrations and run those migrations, we're going to have to provide a connection string. And that connection string is going to go into our Simple Trader DB context right here. So we're going to override on configuring, and we're going to say options builder dot use. I want to use SQL Server. That's what I want to do, but to do that we're going to have to add another NuGet package. So let's go to manage NuGet packages, and let's search for SQL Server. Yeah, okay, so we have Entity Framework Core.SQL Server, and we need to install this because our database is going to be SQL Server. So of course, let's do 2.2 and install that. We should be good. So now if we come back over here, we can use SQL Server. That's like an extension method that package that we just added brings in. And then we just give it a connection string, which I have. Let's just copy that in there. So we're going to be using SQL Express, which I've already installed, and our database name is going to be Simple Trader DB. It doesn't like that, okay. // there we go. Alright, so now we need to generate some migrations and run them. And to do that, we're going to need another NuGet package. This time we're going to be using Entity Framework core dot tools. So down here, version 2.2. Let's install that, and I accept. Alright, so now we have that. We can go into our package manager console, and we can say add migration, call this initial. Hopefully this works. So it's doing some stuff. Okay, we have the wrong, oh, our startup project has to be this, and that should work. Okay, we have to, stock requires a primary key to be defined, but we don't really want that in the table anyways. Because if we go back to our Visio, as you can see, this asset transaction, it has, in our model, it has a stock, but we want to actually embed that into the table. So we can actually do that in Entity Framework. And to do that, we can go into this, we can override this on model creating. And we can say model builder dot entity, and the entity that we have that stock a part of is the asset transaction. So asset transaction dot owns one, and we're gonna say, I believe we just type in like a lambda here, so A. So A for, so what this is doing is it's basically telling it that this stock object on our asset transaction, we want it to be embedded in the asset transaction table. So if we look at stock, symbol and price per share are going to be in the table instead of a stock. So that might be a little bit confusing to understand, but when we generate our database, we'll see, I'll show you guys what the outcome is. So let's give this another shot. Add migration initial. Alright, it actually worked. That's awesome. And now all we have to do, I believe, is update database. Alright, so I was getting errors with update database, and it turns out my connection string was wrong. And I was putting in the wrong server. My correct server is this. If you want to find out what your SQL Express server name is, you can just go into SQL Server Object Explorer over here, View, SQL Server Object Explorer, and it just says it right up here. So local DB for me / MS SQL local DB. Just copy paste that right there, and now our connection string is correct. And now we can update database, and it will work because I already tested it. Takes a little while. And there we go. So now, let's go back to our SQL Server Object Explorer. I got a bunch of databases in here, but if I refresh, open this back up, we now have Simple Trader DB. Open that up, let's look at our tables. We have accounts. Now let's actually open up all these and make sure that they match what we had planned. So for user, we have, we left out a few things here. We left out a password, and we left out a date join. So we're going to have to fix that with migrations. And then let's look at asset transactions. So we have account ID. No, this should have said account ID. We have symbol, price per share, shares, and we forgot date processed. Okay, so we forgot a few things. So let's head back into user. And we're just going to have a date time for date joined. And we're going to have a string for password, which we're going to have to encrypt later. So that should be good there. Let's go into transactions. Okay, so date process is all we need here. Alright, I think that's all we need. And we're going to add migration. Whoops. And we'll call this add dates, since we added all those date fields. Oh, we actually added a password too, but whatever. Okay. Update database. All done. Let's look at our accounts table. Should be fine. I think our users table changed. Let's look at that. Alright, so we got date joined, we got password. And let's look at asset transactions. We have date processed. Okay. So that's our database. Our database is set up. We have migrations. We have a little bit of our domain completed. And that is where we're going to wrap up for now. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any suggestions for the series, be sure to leave them in the comments. Leave a like or subscribe for more. I hope you guys stick along with this series. I'm enjoying it so far. It's fun making projects, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. Thank you.